There has been a lot of controversy about Hillary Clinton's foreign policy credentials and some of the claims she's made. She's talked about being active in the Good Friday Agreement, the agreement in Northern Ireland, which you, of course, spearheaded. Can you describe her role in that process?
She was helpful and supportive, very much involved in the issues, knew all of the delegates. She accompanied President Clinton on each visit he made to Northern Ireland, made several visits of her own. Her greatest focus was on encouraging women in Northern Ireland to get into and stay in the political process and the peace process. And as I've said publicly many times and wrote in my book, the role of women in the peace process in Northern Ireland was significant. It did make a difference in the process. So, as I said, I think it was a helpful and supportive role.
Her claims to be involved, then, you believe, are not exaggerated?
Well, I haven't seen the exact words that she has used to describe it. I've gotten a lot of calls from reporters who've told me what she said, but I think her statements are generally accurate to the extent that they've been relayed to me.
The big talk is about Michigan and Florida. Should there be a revote in those states, and should those elected delegates count? What is your feeling about this?
I think it's important that the Democratic voters and others in Michigan and Florida have a sense of participation. They're crucial states. Florida especially, of course, was decisive in recent elections, and in other elections in American history. It's always played an important role. Now, at the same time, there were rules, and they've been challenged. You know, Katie, credentials challenges are not new in Democratic conventions. I've been to every convention for many, many years, and not too long ago we used to have a whole number of challenges to which delegation should or shouldn't be seated at the convention. I think we ought to be able to work it out so that the people of Florida and Michigan can participate, because they're absolutely critical in the fall election.
Would you support the notion of a revote in those two states?
I think that's up to the states and the Democratic National Committee to work out, along with the campaigns, of course. But I think it would be a mistake not to devise some method by which Florida and Michigan can participate in the process in a meaningful way. And I think that's possible. There's been a wide range of suggestions made about how to do it. I don't see any reason why the parties, that is the Democratic National Committee, the candidates and their campaigns, and the states themselves can't work it out.
There's been some talk that you might be the perfect person. I mean, you got steroids under your belt, well, not really, Northern Ireland as well, that you might be the perfect person to broker this. Is this something that you would be willing to do?
I don't think it'll be necessary for me to get involved in that. They've got a lot of smart people working on it. Obviously, I'd do anything I could to help the Democratic Party and the ultimate nominee in the general election in the fall, and will be strongly supporting whoever is nominated under whatever circumstances. But I think this is capable of being worked out. I know Howard Dean is devoting a lot of attention to it.
What would be your guiding principles as a superdelegate in terms of making a decision?
There are several principles that are implicated, and I would consider all of them. Which candidate won the state in which I live? Which candidate won the congressional district in which I live? Which candidate has the most votes nationwide? Which candidate would make the best president? Which candidate would be the best representative of our party? You have to take all of these things into account, I think, in making a judgment, and it's up to each individual. It reminds me of when I was in the Senate, and the Senate has to advise and consent on presidential nominations. That's what the Constitution says, but it doesn't say what advise and consent means, and it's up to each senator for himself or herself to calculate which factors are most important to them. I think this is similar. You have a responsibility. You have to make the best judgment you can, and you take into account all of the factors. At least in my case, I'll take them all into account before making a judgment.
In the meantime, they are campaigning hard for their particular candidate. Have the candidates themselves called you?
No, neither candidate has called me, but I've gotten calls from representatives on both sides.
Pretty enthusiastic and assertive calls?
No, I think they were very cordial, logical. They made persuasive cases for their candidate. They apply different standards depending upon the circumstances that they're in. Each one uses the argument best calculated to lead to support for their candidate. I've had a lot of attempts at persuasion. You know, I cast several thousand votes in the Senate, and every one I had people saying yes, no, yes, no. So there's nothing new about this.
Do you consider yourself still a Mainer or a New Yorker now?
It's an interesting question. When the superdelegate process first gained attention, Senator Obama won the Maine caucuses. And so I got quite a number of letters saying that since he won the Maine caucuses, you are obligated to vote for him. Then the Democratic National Committee informed me that since I live in New York, I'll be a superdelegate from New York. So now I got a bunch of letters making the opposite argument from the Obama camp and the Clinton camp, assuming the argument that the Obama camp had previously made. So as I said, the arguments depend upon where you are and what happened in your state or your congressional district.
But you are a superdelegate from New York.
That's what I'm informed, yes. Although the director of the Maine party called me and said that they want me to be a superdelegate from Maine. But I don't know if that's possible because I am a resident of New York at this time. My kids go to school here.